All right, let's dive into something pretty mind-blowing today. We're going to explore a theory that looks at a sacred text, the Quran, not just for the words you can read, but for a hidden structure, a code that might be holding something else entirely. It's a wild ride, so let's get started.
So just think about this for a second. Could a holy book that we all thought was lost to history not actually be lost at all? What if it's been right there in front of us the whole time, perfectly preserved, almost like a secret message hidden inside another sacred text? It's a huge question, and it's the core of what we're looking at today.
The idea comes from a researcher named Yasin Sakravi, and his claim is incredibly bold. He says that the famous Book of Moses, the original tablets or Torah given to the prophet, well, it's not buried in some desert. He argues it's right there, an entire intact message encoded across 10 specific chapters of the Quran, one right after the other. I mean, if he's right, this is a massive deal. It could completely change how we see the connection between these holy books. Okay, so if there is a code, where on earth do you even start looking for the key? Well, according to this theory, you don't need some complex cipher. The entry point is actually a single, really important number, a number that supposedly unlocks the whole thing. And that number is 10. Right away, your mind probably jumps to the 10 commandments given to Moses, right? Well, that's exactly the point. The theory says this is no coincidence. It's the first clue. The key to finding the Book of Moses, it claims, starts right at the 10th chapter of the Quran, Surah Yunus. It's like a signpost pointing the way. And here's where it gets super specific. This supposed hidden book isn't just a few verses here and there. No, it's this precise, unbroken block of 10 chapters. It starts with chapter 10, Yunus, and runs all the way through to chapter 19, Maryam. The theory argues that this perfect sequence is deliberate. It's a kind of divine engineering.
So what do we mean by divine engineering? The idea here is that these 10 chapters aren't just sitting next to each other by chance. They're meant to be read together as one single continuous story, a symbolic journey that has its own unique beginning, middle, and end.
And you can see that journey laid out right here. It all kicks off with Surah 10, Yunus, which stands for salvation. Then you move through major themes, like Surah 12, Yusuf, symbolizing gaining divine knowledge. Things really build up with Surah 17, Al-Isra, which talks about the destiny of nations. And then you hit the climax in Surah 18, Al-Kahf, which is all about a major revelation, before it all concludes and gets locked, so to speak, in Surah 19, Maryam. Now, okay, for a theory this big to have any weight, it needs some kind of evidence from inside the Quran itself, right? You need something that points to this hidden system, and Sakrawi claims it's there, hidden in plain sight in that big climax chapter, the 18th one, Al-Kahf, the cave. It all comes down to a single, mysterious word. Here's the verse. It talks about the companions of the cave, a famous story, and this other thing called Al-Rakim. For centuries, scholars have thought Al-Rakim meant, an inscription, maybe a tablet with their names on it, or the name of the mountain. But this theory, it suggests something completely different. And this is the absolute core of the whole idea. The theory proposes that Al-Rakim isn't a physical object at all. It's the name of the code. Think about it. Al-Rakim literally translates to something like the numbered or the inscribed. So the argument is that the Quran is basically telling us right here, hey, pay attention to this numbered system, calling this sequence of 10 chapters the numbered book, which the theory claims is the long-lost Book of Moses. At this point, you're probably asking the same thing I was. Okay, but why? Why would one holy book be hidden inside another one in the first place? Well, the theological reason behind it is actually based on a very specific view of the Quran's relationship to the scriptures that came before it. It's all built on the Islamic idea of muhaiminan alayhi, which basically means supremacy or guardianship. From this perspective, the Quran doesn't just come after previous revelations, it contains them. It swallows them whole, preserving their original, pure message. So this view doesn't see the Quran as a replacement, but more like the ultimate final archive for all divine messages. So when you boil it all down, what we're really talking about here is a completely different way of reading scripture. It's a method that asks you to look at the Quran not just as a book of words, but as a kind of intricate, multi-layered map designed with a hidden purpose. And this really lays out the difference. On one side, you have traditional interpretation, which is all about language, history, and centuries of scholarship. On the other, you have this science of al-Rakim, as Sakrawi calls it. It's less about historical context and more about numbers, sequences, and symbols.
It's a totally different approach that sees the Quran not as just another book in a series, but as the final container for all of them.
So in the end, we're left with this really deep question. It doesn't really matter if you think this theory is a groundbreaking discovery or just a really compelling interpretation. It makes you think about the very nature of these texts. Is all the meaning just in the words we read on the surface? Or could there be messages hidden deeper, in the patterns, the numbers, in the very architecture of the book itself? Definitely something to think about.